was a bright, cold day in April, and the clocks were striking 13. Winston Smith, his chin nuzzled into his breast in an effort to escape the vile wind, slipped quickly through the glass door of Victory Mansions, though not quickly enough to prevent a swirl of gritty dust from entering along with him. The hallway smelt of boiled cabbage and old rag mats. At the end of it, a colored poster, too large for indoor display, had been tacked to the wall. It depicted simply an enormous face, more than a meter wide, the face of a man about 45, with a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features. Winston made for the stairs. It was not, it was no use trying the lift. Even at the best of times, it was seldom working, and at present the electrical current was cut off during daylight hours. It sounds like California to me. California and like Arizona and like a list.
Mhm.
But it says it was part of the economy to drive in preparation for Hate Week. The flat was 7 flights up, and Winston, who was 39 and had a viscerous ulcer above his right ankle. Ooh. Viscerous? Is that right? Viscerous. I'm dumb. Anyways, he had a viscerous ulcer above his right ankle, went slowly, resting several times on the way. On each landing, opposite the lift shaft, the poster with his enormous face gazed from the wall. It was one of those pictures which are so contrived that the eyes follow you about when you move. Big brother is watching you. Big brother is watching you. The caption beneath it ran. But realistically, like, that's not like yeah, he's talking about a picture, but like that's kind of what they're pushing with like everything. It's kind of like that video we seen the other day where he was saying that like they can move information through like electrical circuits, you know? Like there's a reason that they're doing this stuff. And realistically, it's probably for people like me and you that just aren't updating with society, you know.
All that, and think about like COVID, Tim Walls, like snitch on your neighbor, we're watching.
Yep, well, 100%. Says inside the flat, a fruity voice was reading out a list of figures which had something to do with the production of pig iron. Pig iron. The voice came from an oblong metal plaque, like a dulled mirror, which formed part of the surface of the right hand wall. Winston turned a switch, and the voice sank somewhat. Though the words were still distinguishable, the instrument, the telescreen, it was called, could be dimmed, but there was no way of shutting it off completely. He moved over to the window, a smallish, frail figure. The meagerness of his body merely emphasized the blue overalls, which were uniform of the party. Oh, so they all have to be dressed the same. Okay.
Well, and it's not like...
And yes, 1984. Let me make sure that I got that in my caption before I get too carried away, if I can. I don't know if I can even add that at this point, but yeah, it is 1984.
It's similar to like North Korea. You know, as far as like there's a few pre-approved like jumpsuit styles because clothing is like I don't know, it's think about like I mean you've talked about like when the first sign of like kids going liberal is like their weird ass like commie haircuts, like
Yeah.
girls cutting their hair
Yeah.
because it's a tool of control because your clothes and your hair is your identity, it's your sense of self.
Yep. No, and I gotta say that I do have to commentate on this and stop and pause and talk about it and all that. Otherwise, I will not be skirting their guidelines and copyright and all of that stuff. So that's basically just what I'm doing. Anyways, his hair was very fair. His face naturally hell sanguine.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I've seen that word.
Sanguine. I don't know.
Sanguine.
That's honestly one of those words that I haven't used or like heard. And
Sensuine.
so, yeah, sanguine.
Anyways, his skin roughened by coarse soap and blunt razor blades and the cold of the winter that had just ended. Outside, even the shot window pane, the world looked cold. Oh, sorry guys, I can't read. Even outside, even through the shut window pane, the world looked cold. Down in the street, little eddies of wind were whirling dust and torn paper into spirals. And though the sun was shining and the sky was a harsh blue, there seemed to be no color in anything except the posters that were plastered everywhere. The black, mustachioed face glazed down from every commanding corner. There was one on the house front immediately opposite. Big Brother is watching you, the caption said, while the dark eyes looked deep into Winston's own. Down at street level, another poster, torn at one corner, flapped fitfully in the wind, alternately covering and uncovering the single word Ing Sok. In the far distance, a helicopter skimmed down between the roofs, hovered for an instant like a blue bottle, and darted away again with a curving flight. Oh, that's interesting. Seeing, I don't know. I guess I was gonna say drones, but I guess we have helicopters. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, the patrols did not matter. However, only the thought police mattered, which we have thought police.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100% on these platforms, like you end up with, you know.
Well, that, and unfortunately for George Orwell, he meant this as a warning, but they read it to a bunch of idiots in high school who were just like, hey, thought police are pretty cool.
Yep.
Like, that's how we got, like, PC bros.
Yep.
And, like, people who think they can just, like, confront you and, like, tell you have to be quiet because they don't like your opinion or it's wrong. And they will just turn you over to cops and the authorities.
Yep. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. 1984 Israel. If you're enjoying this so far, leave a like. That way, Facebook. What am I talking about? I'm restricted on Facebook. Sorry. That way, the YouTube algorithm knows to push this content. Otherwise, I end up with no viewers. But the more likes I get, and the more people that are commenting and sharing this around, the better I'll do. Anyways, I'll read on. Behind Winston's back, the voice from the telescreen was still babbling away about pig iron and the overfulfillment of the 9th 3-year plan. The telescreen received and transmitted simultaneously. Any sound that Winston made above the level of a very low whisper would be picked up by it. Moreover, so long as he remained within the field of vision which the metal plaque commanded, he could be seen as well as heard. There was, of course, no way of knowing whether you were being watched at any given moment. However, often or on what system the thought police plugged in on any individual wire was guesswork. Which is, like I just said, that's what they're doing. They're plugging it in and just running it through wires.
Well, and even like the pig iron, like or later on, like you'll hear it repeated and repeated, and like it's pretty much like a worthless metal that doesn't affect anything, but it seems good. It's like all the shit that they're like, no, like look, these numbers are great, but you're like, yeah, but like nobody cares about that.
Well, yeah.
You know, like you said, they're like, oh well, look how much money you said earned and spent and blah blah blah, and then everybody's like, well yeah, but it was all worthless. Like you guys just threw that money away on all these worthless programs and just brag about it.
Yep.
And windmills.
Well, yeah. Yep. It was conceivable that they watched everybody all the time. But at any rate, they could plug in your wire whenever they wanted to. You had to did live from habit that became instinct, in the assumption that every sound you made was overheard, and except in darkness, every moment was scrutinized. Which, even darkness, I mean, you're not running from that today. Like 100%, like in darkness and any condition, like in the mountains, unless you're like, even if you're buried in the ground, I mean, you're kind of just, that's where we're at.
Well, even think about in your house. Like, is it ever truly dark? Do you have a million little lights of all your electronics that are on?
Yep. See, we brought telescreens into our own homes and hold them in our hands. Yep. 100%. You're looking right into one, and I'm recording this on one. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is. And I mean, even your TVs, could have
your cameras that everybody put in.
Yeah, there's cameras on people's.
Your
there's all
on your Wi-Fi.
All sorts of stuff. And that was you.
Mm-hmm.
You're funny, but
I wanted other people to think about it.
Yeah. Continuing onward. Winston kept his back turned to the telescreen. It was safer, though, as he well knew, even a back can be revealing. A cocaine meter away. See, look, now I'm changing the wording, and it's no longer copyright. A kilometer away, the Ministry of Truth, his place of work, towered vast and white above the grimly landscape. This, he thought with a sort of vague distaste. This was London, chief city of Airstrip 1, itself the third most populous of the provinces in Oceania. He tried to squeeze out some childhood memory that should tell him whether London had always been quite like this. Were there always these vistas of rotting 19th century houses, their sides shored up with balks of timber, their windows patched with cardboard, and their roofs with corrugated iron, their crazy garden walls sagging in all directions, and the bombed sites where the plaster dust swirled in the air, and the willow herb staggled over the heaps of rubble, and the places where the bombs had cleared large path, and there had sprung up sordid colonies of wooden dwellings like chicken houses. But it was no use. He could not remember. Nothing remained of his childhood except a series of bright lit table logs, occurring against no background and mostly unintelligible. did this story start with once upon a time? Well, unfortunately, I guess you're just going to have to scrub back to the beginning and see. And then after you do that, you're going to have to leave a like. The Ministry of Truth, Mini-True, in Newspeak, was startlingly different from any other object in sight. It was an enormous pyramidal structure of glittering white concrete, soaring up terrace after terrace, 300 meters into the air. From where Winston stood, it was just possible to read, picked out on his white face in elegant lettering, the three slogans of the party. War is peace. Freedom is slavery. And ignorance is strength. Which is insane. Which, like, 100... Like, yeah, you know, I think that we can have peace through war. That is something that I can agree with. Freedom isn't slavery. That's ridiculous. I mean, right now we're dealing with tax slavery. You know, that's one of the forms of slavery, but, like, freedom would never be slavery.
No.
But, I mean, you think about it, and that's kind of where certain parties would like to push us. And then ignorance is strength. That's huge. Like, that's huge right now. That's enormous in America. Like, everybody is so low in education, you know, that it's insane.
Yep.
Let's see here. I like the Bible for reading about the beginning. Yeah, we definitely like the Bible too. And then how do I add a still picture on my live feed? How do you add a still picture on your live feed? I don't know. Slave to God or slave to sin must make a choice. Yeah. Indeed. If you haven't liked this, go ahead and leave a like, because that is 100% what is going to make me finish this book. Otherwise, I'm not going to keep reading this book. Oh, I'm probably going to keep reading it. I lied. I'm just not going to keep reading it to the internet. And then we won't have this beautiful discussion, this amazing talk about how we can't go this way and how we're seeing similarities in today's day and what's in this book. And this has nothing to do with Trump. I'm going to state that right now. This has nothing to do with Trump. But I do want to continue reading because I haven't even made it through chapter 1. The Ministry of Truth contained. It was said 3,000 rooms above ground level and corresponding ramifications below. Scattered about London, there were just 3 other buildings of similar appearance and size. So completely did they dwarf the surrounding architecture that from the roof of Victory Mansions, you could see all 4 of them simultaneously. There were the homes of the 4 ministries, between which the entire apparatus of government was derived. The Ministry of Truth, which concerned itself with news, entertainment, education, and fine arts. The Ministry of Peace, which concerned itself with war. The Ministry of Love, which maintained law and order. Really? The Ministry of Love maintained law and order? That's insane. The Ministry of Plenty, which was responsible for economic affairs. Their names in Newspeak: Mini-True, Mini-Pax, Mini-Love, and Mini-Plenty. The Ministry of Love was really frightening. Was the really frightening one. There were no windows in it at all. Winston had never been inside the Ministry of Love, nor within half a cocaine meter of it. It was a place impossible to enter except on official business, and then only by penetrating through a maze of barbed wire. Wow. Newspeak was the official language of Oceania. For an account of its structure and etymology, see the appendix. So I might have to check in the appendix to see what that is. Anyways, so it was a maze of barbed wire entanglements, steel doors, and hidden machine gun nests. Even streets leading up to its outer barriers were roamed by gorilla-faced guards in black uniforms, armed with jointed truncheons. What is that? A jointed truncheon?
It's the weapon that cops carry. I can't say that word on the internet. Be good stick. They're nightclub.
Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Comments. Do an Arnold and Schwarzenegger impression. Oh man, I don't want to. Should I?
Do it. It'd be funny.
Do an Arnold. But that's the thing is, do you want me to read it? Because I could.
That would be funnier.
Okay. Anyways, next. I'm Christian, Republican, the greatest invention, and the rapper of all time. Atheism was compulsory in 1984, and that's the scariest part. It's grown since the 1880s from Darwin and Scopes' theory and all that. All right, I noticed I got 4 people in here. I'm gonna read like 2 sentences in my best Arnold voice since it was requested. And my wife also thought it would be amusing. But I expect to see some likes for that. Winston turned around abruptly. He had set his feathers into the expression of quiet optimism, which it was advisable to wear when facing the telescreen. Okay, that was 2 sentences. I hope you're happy with that. Anyways, let's try and seriously. I didn't even interpret what I said. I'm gonna have to reread what I just said. Anyways, Winston turned around abruptly. He had set his features into the expression of quiet optimism, which it was advisable to wear when facing the telescreen. He crossed the room into the tiny kitchen by leaving the ministry. At this time of day, he had sacrificed his lunch in the canteen, and he was aware that there was no food in the kitchen except a hunk of dark-colored bread, which had got to be saved for tomorrow's breakfast. Ooh, bread for breakfast. Hell yeah. He took down from the shelf a bottle of colorless liquid with a plain white label marked Victory Gin. It gave off a sickly, oily smell as of Chinese rice spirit. Winston poured out nearly a teacupful, nerved himself for a shock, and gulped it down like a dose of medicine. You know, I can't say I disagree. Ah, right on. Thanks for the thumbs up. Love it. But I can't say I disagree. I do gotta say, in a world like that, I would probably drink, because I'm guaranteeing you that there's not anything else that they would let you do. So, carrying on. Instantly his face turned scarlet and the water ran out of his eyes. The stuff was like nitric acid, and moreover, in swallowing it, one had the sensation of being hit in the back of the head with a rubber club. Whoa, that is definitely some strong stuff. See that I got 2 people. If you're enjoying my reading, enjoying the commentary, go ahead and like and follow, because I don't know how many chapters of this I'm actually going to read, and if you want to hear all of it and if you want to see all of it, you're going to have to be following. The next moment, however, the burning in his belly died down and the world began to look more cheerful. He took a cigarette from a crumpled pack marked Victory Cigarettes and incautiously held it upright, whereupon the tobacco fell out on the floor. Oh, that's some shitty cigarettes. He like held it upright, the tobacco just falls right out of it. That's rough. With the next, he was more successful. He went back to the living room and sat down. A small table that stood to the left of the telescreen. From the table drawer, he pulled out a pen holder, a bottle of ink, and a thick quattro sized blank book with a red and black marbled cover. For some reason, the telescreen in the living room was in an unusual position. Instead of being placed, as was normal, in the end wall where it could command the whole room, it was in the longer wall opposite to the window. To the one side of it, there was a shallow alcove in which Winston was now sitting, and which, when the flats were built, had probably been intended to hold bookshelves. By sitting in the alcove and keeping back, Winston was able to remain outside the range of the telescreen. So far as sight went, he could be heard, of course, but so long as he stayed in his present position, he could not be seen. Oh, so he found a spot. He's like, this is the place where I can be and not be seen. But they can hear him.
Yep.
That also means that you'd think that, like, the book would be a secret. Like, they wouldn't know it was in the book.
They don't think they do.
Okay.
It's been a while since I read the whole thing, and last time I read it, I only made it to like chapter 6 or 7, remember?
Yeah.
And then life got crazy. But no, when you think about your Wi-Fi, it can tell where people are.
Mm-hmm.
Remember watching that video?
Yeah. 100%. Well, and what bothers me is the fact that they've got all these drones now. Like, when growing up my whole life, I always figured if anything was going to go wrong, I would go into the mountains. And then as I accumulated you and Skyson, which I shouldn't have said, but it doesn't matter, I realized that, like, and it really within the last few years that, like, and not even the last few years, last, like, month, that we don't have anywhere to go.
Yep.
Like, there is no more running away. There is no more getting away. Like, they're going to see you no matter where you go, no matter what you do, no matter how you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the total screen, like the TV or your phone, or it's beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've got satellites, and that's on the far end of things. In between that, they've got drones, and they've got all sorts of stuff that's definitely seeing your every move.
Yep.
Let's see. Man had abused pleasure and sin since the dawn of time. Romans 8:18. For I consider that the suffering of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are who are called according to his purpose. I like those when I think of the past and present times. Yeah, really. It was partly the unusual geography of the room that had suggested to him that the thing that he was now about to do, or suggested to him the thing that he was now about to do. Anyways, but it had also been suggested by the book that he had just taken out of the drawer. It was a peculiarly beautiful book. It's smooth, creamy paper, a little yellowed by age, was of a kind that had not been manufactured for at least 40 years past. Wow. That just kind of shows like how bad everything was, you know?
Yeah, everything just is functional.
Well, yeah. He could guess, however, that the book was much older than that. He had seen it lying in the window of a frowsy little junk shop in a slummy quarter of town. Just what quarter did not now remember, and had been stricken immediately by an overwhelming desire to possess it. Party members were supposed not to go into ordinary shops. Dealing on the free market, it was called. Well, so they weren't supposed to go into the free market anyways. But the rule was not strictly kept because there were various things such as shoelaces and razor blades, which it was impossible to get hold of in any other ways. He had given a quick glance up and down the street and then had slipped inside and bought a book for $2.50. That's something else that gets me isn't this book pretty old?
It was written in the 1949?
Yeah.
Well, and what he means is, like, the party was saying, like, it's like New York right now. You're supposed to go to the state-run stores.
Yeah, okay.
But they couldn't enforce it because they also couldn't supply those sorts. Oh my God, what are you doing to that book?
Yeah, I feel like I got a spider on me.
Unhand that thing right now.
I'm reading it.
Babe, you're ruining it.
I haven't read a book.
I can tell.
In some time. Anywhom, he had given a glance up and down the street, and then had slipped inside and bought a book for $2.50. At the time, he was not conscious of wanting it for any particular purpose. He had carried it guiltily home in his briefcase, even with nothing written in it. It was a compromising possession. The thing that he was about to do was open a diary. This was not illegal. Nothing was illegal since there were no longer any laws. But if detected, it was reasonably certain that it would be punished by death or at least by 25 years in forced labor camp. Winston fitted a nib into the penholder and sucked it into. Let me restart this sentence. Winston fitted a nib into the penholder and sucked it to get the grease off. The pen was an archaic instrument, seldom used even for signatures, and he had procured one fortuitously and with some difficulty, simply because a feeling that a beautiful creamy paper deserved to be written on with a real nib instead of being scratched with an ink pencil. The hell? What is an ink pencil?
They didn't have ballpoint pens, I don't think, at that point.
Okay, so they're scratching?
Yeah, so they're,
Let's see, comment. I could also say God places us where we need to be. Born into families we need to be a part of. I could also talk about David in the pit of despair he found a way out of relying on God. Adam and Eve didn't get it right, neither will we. But thanks be to God and his Son Jesus for the salvation of all and the ability to turn from sin based off his laws and standards to live by. Yep. Yep. All right. Actually, he was not used to writing by hand. Apart from very short notes, it was usual to dictate everything into the speak wire, which was, of course, impossible for his present purpose. He dipped the pen into the ink and then faltered for just a second. A tremor had gone through his bowel to the mark, or a tremor had gone through his bowels. To mark the paper was the the decisive act. In small, clumsy letters, he wrote, April 4th, 1984. He sat back. A sense of complete helplessness had descended upon him. To begin with, he did not know with any certainty that this was 1984. It must be round about that date, since he was fairly sure that his age was 39, and he believed that he had been born in 1944 or 1945. But it was never possible nowadays to pin down any date within a year or two. Hope you're enjoying this. If you're enjoying this, leave a like, comment, because that is going to push me further as I read this. And if you want to keep hearing this as I read on, you're definitely going to have to follow. So, for whom it suddenly occurred to him to wonder, was he writing this diary for the future, for the unborn? His mind hovered for a moment round the doubtful date on the page, and then he fetched up with a bump against his newspeak word doublethink. Okay. For the first time, the magnitude of what he had undertaken came home to him. How could you communicate with the future? It was of its nature impossible. Either the future would resemble the present, in which case it would not listen to him, or it would be different from it, and his predicament would be meaningless. For some time he sat gazing stupidly at the paper. The telescreen had changed over to strident military music. It was curious that he seemed not merely to have lost the power of expressing himself, but even to have forgotten what it was that he had originally intended to say. For weeks past, he had been making ready for this moment, and it had never crossed his mind that anything would be needed except courage. The actual writing would be easy. And that's kind of crazy, because I sit here and I'm like reading it, and I think of like Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
And all these sites that are actually like they it's like what you say, if it doesn't go along with what they're saying, they claim it as wrong speech, you know?
Yep.
It's honestly pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All he had to do was transfer to the paper the interminable, I don't know what that word is.
Interminable.
Yeah, rest monologue that had been running inside his head literally for years. At this moment, however, even the monologue had dried up. Moreover, his varicose ulcer had begun itching unbearably. He dared not to scratch it, or he dared not scratch it, because if he did, so it always became inflamed. The seconds were ticking by. He was conscious of nothing except the blankness of the page in front of him, the itching of the skin above his ankle, the blaring of the music, and the slight booziness caused by the gin. Suddenly, he began writing in sheer panic, only imperfectly aware of what he was setting down. His small but childish handwriting straggled up and down the page, shedding first its capital letters and finally even full stops.
Because it all just started blending together.
Well, yeah, because he didn't know what he was doing.
Well, not even that, because he had hit a point of, like, panic.
Nope.
Because imagine sitting there, you've been preparing for this for weeks, and then you get there, and what the hell do you say?
Well, yeah.
Like, you've done all the things, but what do you actually say?
Yep.
You give himself the yips.
Yep. Well, yeah, it's like when somebody tells you to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, even think about how many times, like, on Facebook, you see something, and you're like, I want to say something funny or an argument or an agreement, and then you go to say it, and you're just like, you just don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
And so you really want to, but ultimately you feel stupid. Like,
Oh,
you don't
yeah.
have a thought in your head, and you're just like, whatever, I'll leave a like and scroll on.
Yep. Yep.
And then next time it's worse because you're saying that much less.
Well, yeah. Yep. Hello, thanks for joining this chat. I'm reading this live stream. I'm reading 1984. If you want to continue to hear 1984, then you're gonna have to like this and subscribe so that you can continue to see when I read this, because I guarantee you, I'm not reading this whole book tonight. Anyways, let's continue on with the message that he had just written down. And if, like I said, if you're enjoying this, I encourage you to leave a like. April 4th, 1984. Last night to the flicks. All war films. One very good one of a ship full of refugees being bombed somewhere in the Mediterranean. Audience much amused by shots of a great huge fat man trying to swim away with a helicopter after him. First, you saw him wallowing along in the water like a porpoise. Then you saw him through the helicopter gun sights. Then he was full of holes, and the sea around him turned pink, and he sank as suddenly as the holes had let in the water. Audience shouting with laughter when he sank. Then you saw a lifeboat full of children, a helicopter hovering over it. There was middle-aged women, might have been a Jewess, sitting up in the bow with a little boy about 3 years old in her arms. Little boy screaming with fright and hiding his head between her breasts as if he was trying to burrow right into her, and the woman putting her arms around him and comforting him, although she was blue with fright herself, all the time covering him up as much as possible, as if she thought her arms could keep the bullets off him. Then the helicopter planted a 20-kilo bomb in among them, terrific flash, and the boat went all to matchwood. Then there was a wonderful shot of a child's arm going up, 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 right up into the air. A helicopter with a camera in its nose must have followed it up, and there was a lot of applause from the party seats, but a woman down in the pro part of the house suddenly started kicking up a fuss and shouting they didn't oughter have showed it, not in front of the kids. They didn't it ain't right, not in front of kids. It ain't until the police turned her down or turned her out. I won't suppose anything happened to her. Nobody cares what the proles say. Typical prole reaction. They never. Winston stopped writing stopped writing partly because he suffered from a cramp. Oh, and then I have to stop again, otherwise I'll get copyrighted. And I'd assume he's getting that cramp because he's probably, like he said, hasn't been writing a lot, you know? I mean, if you don't write a lot, you don't do that stuff a lot. Even if you do write a lot, you're going to get cramps. But realistically, think about it. That's not a lot to write before you get a cramp, you know?
Yep.
Also, it's just like kind of crazy that's what he thought they would be watching for entertainment. You know?
Well, and it's not necessarily they're watching it for entertainment. It's what's given to them as entertainment. Think about how people are about the Palestine and Gaza thing.
Yeah.
Or any of those people who are like, no, like, we're pro-Palestine, fuck Gaza. Do you think any of them feel bad when they're seeing videos of those little kids getting bombed or anything when they're Israeli?
Very true.
No, they're like happy. Even think about some of the people that are like overly like pro-Israel that are just as happy to see like the little Gaza kids.
Yep.
Like what they've done is turned war into like another dividing point, another way to get people riled up and against each other.
Well, yeah. If you're enjoying this, definitely leave a like. If you leave a like, if you leave a comment, if you do those things, pushes me up in the algorithm. If you follow me, if you go and subscribe, that means you can finish this book, because I'm not going to be finishing it tonight. Definitely not going to be finishing it tonight. Continuing on. He did not know what to make, or he did not know what had made him pour out this stream of rubbish. But the curious thing was that while he was doing so, a totally different memory had clarified itself in mind, to the point where he almost felt equal to writing it down. It was, he now realized, because of this other incident that he had suddenly decided to come home and begin the diary today. It happened that morning at the ministry. If anything so nebulous could be said to happen. It was nearly 1100, and in the records department where Winston worked, they were dragging the chairs out of the cubicles and grouping them in the center of the hall, opposite the big telescreen, in preparation for the 2 minutes hate. Winston was just taking his place in one of the middle rows when two people whom he knew by sight but had never spoken to came unexpectedly into his room. One of them was a girl whom he often passed in the corridors. He did not know her name, but he knew that she worked in the fiction department, presumably since he had sometimes seen her with oily hands and carrying a spanner. She had some mechanical job on one of those novel writing machines. She was a bold looking girl of about 27 with thick dark hair, a freckled face, a swift athletic movements, a narrow scarlet sash, emblem of junior anti-sex an emblem of the junior anti-sex league was wound several times around the waist of her overalls, just tightly enough to bring out the shapeliness of her hips. Winston had disliked her from the very first moment of seeing her. He knew the reason. It was because of the atmosphere of the hockey fields and cold baths of the community hikes, and general clean-mindedness which she managed to carry about with her. He disliked all women, and especially the young and pretty ones. It was always the women, and above all the young ones, who were the most bigoted adherents of the party, the swallowers of the slogans, the amateur spies, and the nosers out of unorthodoxy.
Well, yeah, because they're like the liberal ladies on Facebook that you're arguing with all the time. He's not saying that as in like the way you're thinking, like they're bigots. He's saying like really, like think about those liberals, like of today.
Well, yeah.
Or like really any extremist, like how like blind they get.
Yep.
And convinced that their way is the only way.
Well, yeah.
And they will snitch you out or report you to authorities or try to get you shut down if it doesn't align with their beliefs. Yep. You know?
But this particular girl gave the impression of being more dangerous than most. Once they passed in the corridors, she had given him a quick sidelong glance, which seemed to pierce right into him for a moment, had filled him with black terror. The idea had even crossed his mind that she might be an agent of the thought police. That it was true was very unlikely. Still, he continued to feel a peculiar uneasiness which had fear mixed up in it as well as hostility whenever she was anywhere near him. The other person was a man named O'Brien, a member of the inner party, a holder of some post so important and remote that Winston had only a dim idea of its nature. A momentary hush passed over the group of people round the chairs as they saw the black overalls of the inner party member approaching. O'Brien was a large, burly man with a thick neck and a coarse, humorous, brutal face. In spite of his his formidable appearance, he had a certain charm of manner. He had a trick of resettling his spectacles on his nose, which was curiously disarming in some indefinable way. Curiously civilized. It was a gesture which, if anyone had still thought in such terms, might have recalled an 18th century nobleman offering his snuff box. Winston had seen O'Brien a dozen times in almost as many years. He felt deeply drawn to him, and not solely because he was intrigued by the contrast between O'Brien's urbane manner and his prize fighter's physique. Much more, it was because he secretly held a belief, or perhaps not a belief, merely a hope, that O'Brien's political orthodoxy was not perfect. Something in his face suggested it irresistibly. And again, perhaps it was not even unorthodoxy that was written in his face, but simply intelligence. But at any rate, he had the appearance of being a person that you could talk to. If somehow you could cheat the telegram and get him alone. Winston had never made the smallest effort to verify this guess. Indeed, there was no way of doing so. At this moment, O'Brien glanced at his wristwatch, saw that it was nearly 1100, and eventually decided to stay in the records department until 2 minutes of hate was over. He took a chair in the same row as Winston, a couple places away. A small, sandy haired woman who worked in the next cubicle to Winston was between them. The girl with dark hair was sitting immediately behind. The next moment, a hideous, grinding screech as of some monstrous machine running without oil burst from the big telescreen at the end of the room. It was a noise that set one's teeth on edge. And bristled the hair at the back of one's neck. The hate had started. As usual, the face of Emmanuel Goldstein, the enemy of the people, had flashed onto the screen. There were hisses and there among the audience. The little sandy-haired woman gave a squeak of mingled fear and disgust. Goldstein and Renegade and Backslider, who once, how long ago, nobody quite remembers, had been one of the leading figures of the party, almost on the level with the big brother himself, and then had engaged into counter-revolutionary activities, had been condemned to death, and had mysteriously escaped and disappeared. The program of the 2 minutes of hate varied from day to day, but there was none in which Goldstein was not the principal figure. He was the primal traitor, the earliest defiler of the party's purity. All subsequent crimes against the party, all treacheries, acts of sabotage, heresies, deviations sprang directly out of his teaching. Somewhere or other, he was still alive and hatching conspiracies, perhaps somewhere beyond the sea, under the protection of his foreign paymasters, perhaps even, so it was occasionally rumored, in some hiding place in Oceania itself. So like a rebel. Like a rebel out there, and he's just gone.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yep. Just gone. Flipped out of existence.
That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
If you're enjoying this, please leave a like. And follow if you want to finish this. Anyways, continuing on. Winston's diaphragm was constricted. He could never see the face of Goldstein without a painful mixture of emotions. It was a lean Jewish face with a great fuzzy roll of white hair and a small goatee beard. A clever face, and yet somehow inherently despicable, with the kind of smile, or the kind of senile silliness in the long thin nose near the end of which a pair of spectacles was perched. It resembled the face of a sheep, and the voice, too, had a sheep-like quality. Goldstein was delivering his usual venomous attack upon the doctrines of the party, an attack so exaggerated and perverse that a child should have been able to see through it, and yet just plausible enough to fill one with an alarmed feeling that other people, less level headed than oneself, might be taken in by it. He was abusing Big Brother. He was denouncing the dictatorship of the party. He was demanding the immediate conclusion of peace with Eurasia. He was advocating freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom of thought. He was crying hysterically that the revolution had been betrayed. And all of this in a rabid polysyllabic speech, which was sort of a parody of the habitual style of the orators of the party, and even contained newspeak words. More newspeak words, indeed, than any party member would normally use in real life, and all while lest one should be in any doubt to the reality which Goldstein's spacious claptrap that right there sounds like some people.
Mm-hmm.
A claptrap.
Yeah.
Anyways, spacious. Anyways, claptrap covered behind his head on the telescreen. There merged the endless columns of the Eurasian army, row after row of solid-looking men with expressionless Asiatic faces, who swam up to the surface of the screen and vanished to be replaced by others exactly similar. How can something be exactly similar? The dull rhythmic tramp of the soldiers' boots formed the background of Goldstein's bleeding voice. Before the hate had proceeded for 30 years, uncontrollable exclamations of rage were breaking out of half the people in the room. The self-satisfied, sheep-like face on the screen and the terrifying power of the Eurasian army behind it were too much to be borne. Besides, the sight or even the thought of Goldstein produced fear and anger automatically. He was an object of hatred more constant than either Eurasia or Eastasia. Since then, Oceania was at war with one of these powers. It was generally at peace with the other. But what was strange was that although Goldstein was hated and despised by everybody, although every day and 1,000 times a day on platforms, on telescreen, on newspaper, in books, his theories were refuted, smashed, ridiculed, held up to the general gaze for the pitiful rubbish that they were. In spite of all this, his influence never seemed to grow less. Always there were fresh dupes waiting to be seduced by him. A day never passed when spies and saboteurs acting under his direction were not unmasked by the thought police. He was the commander of a vast shadowy army, an underground network of conspirators dedicated to the overthrow of the state. The Brotherhood, its name was supposed to be. There were also whispered stories of a terrible book, a compendium of all the heresies of which Goldstein was the author and which circulated clandestinely here and there. It was a book without a title. People referred to. If you're enjoying this, please leave a like. Definitely leave a like. It, if at all, simply as the book. But one knew of such things only through vague rumors. Neither the Brotherhood nor the book was a subject of any ordinary party member would mention if there was a way of avoiding it. Wow, this is honestly like pretty whack. And I honestly feel like these chapters have got to be massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an old school book.
Yeah. It's warm in here.
Oh, it's the shop for you.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for tuning in. We're just reading 1984. If you're enjoying it, or if you do enjoy it, please, I encourage you to not only leave a like, but leave a comment. Anyways. In its second minute, the hate rose to a frenzy. People were leaping up and down in their places and shouting at the tops of their voices in an effort to drown the maddening bleating voices that came from the screen. The little sandy-haired woman had turned bright pink. Her mouth was opening and shutting like that of a landed fish. Even O'Brien's heavy face was flushed. He was sitting very straight in his chair. His powerful chest swelled and quivered as though he were standing up to the assault of a wave. The dark-haired girl behind Winston had begun crying out, "Swine, swine, swine," and suddenly she picked up a heavy Newspeak dictionary and flung it at the screen. It struck Goldstein's nose and bounced off. The voice continued inexorably. In a lucid moment, Winston found that he was shouting with others and kicking his heels violently against the rung of his chair. The horrible thing about the 2 minutes of hate was not that one was obligated to act a part, but that it was impossible to avoid joining it. Within 30 seconds, any pretense was always unnecessary. A hideous ecstasy of fear and vindictiveness, a desire to kill, to smash faces with a sledgehammer, seemed to flow through the whole group of people like an electrical current, turning one even against one's will to grimacing, screaming lunatic, or into a grimacing, screaming lunatic. And yet the rage that one felt was an abstract, undirected emotion which could be switched from one object to another like the flame of a blow lamp. Thus, at one moment, Winston's hatred was not turned against Goldstein at all, but on the contrary, against Big Brother, the party, and the thought police. And at such moments, his heart went out to the lonely, deridable heretic on the screen, sole guardian of the truth and sanity in the world of lies. And yet, the very next instant, he was at one with the people about him. And all that was said of Goldstein seemed to him to be true. At those moments, his secret loathing of Big Brother changed into admiration or adoration, and Big Brother seemed to tower up, an invincible, fearless protector standing like a rock against the hordes of Asia and Goldstein. In spite of his isolation, his helplessness, and the doubt that hung about his very existence, seemed like sinister enchanter, capable by the mere power of his voice, wrecking the structure of civilization. Now, the 2 minutes of hate's crazy because they do that shit.
Remember me saying it weirded me the hell out as soon as I seen it?
Well, yeah, it's fucking whack.
Well, yeah, because then you're so drained of anger and all those emotions that what else are you going to be angry about?
Oh. Oh, yeah. Hang on, I am sitting here. I'm kind of curious where the end of this chapter is. Oh, fuck, I got like 3 more pages.
Should done
5
popcorn reading.
5 more pages. Popcorn reading. With who? You?
I'm just watching.
Don't have one person watching this anyways.
I'm listening.
Hello. I'm going to be continuing reading on. I'd definitely appreciate some comments. I'd appreciate the likes. I'd appreciate if you hung around and listened. But here we go. I'm carrying on. It was even possible at moments to switch one's hatred this way or that by a voluntary act. Suddenly, by the sort of violent effort with which one wrenches one's head away from the pillow in a nightmare, Winston succeeded in transferring his hatred from the face on the screen to the dark-haired girl behind him. Vivid, beautiful hallucinations flashed through his mind. He would flog her to death with a rubber truncheon. He would tie her naked to a stake and shoot her full of arrows like Saint Sebastian. He would ravage her and cut her throat at the moment of climax. Better than before, moreover, he realized it was that he hated her. He hated her because she was young and pretty and sexless. Because he wanted to go to bed with her and would never do so. Because round her sweet, supple waist, she seemed to ask you to encircle it with your arms, or with your arm. There was only the odious scarlet sash, aggressive symbol of chastity. So he's like a super incel.
That's what I was going to say. Winston is our first incel.
Like a super incel.
Well, but really, he's just a product of his environment because on the flip hand, you have the government using prostitutes and porn as a weapon.
Yeah.
To control you and keep you drained and distracted.
Yep.
And then because of that, the younger generation, like what's happening now, how many of Gen Z is like anti-sex before marriage? The girls are like ultra modest and becoming Muslim because they want to cover up that much.
Yep.
Just like this girl.
Yep. Oh, exactly.
Like the youth is like, no, we are not letting them use this as a tool against us. It is something I control, and the government cannot take that from me. You know?
Yep.
And so, like, yeah, as much as he's an incel, like I said, he's also a product of his environment.
Nope. Well, exactly. 100%. The hate rose to its climax. The voice of Goldstein had become an actual sheep's bleat. and for an instant the face changed into that of a sheep. Then the sheep face melted into the figure of a Eurasian soldier who seemed to be advancing, huge and terrible, his submachine gun roaring and seemed to spring out of the surface of the screen. So that some of the people in the front row actually flinched backwards in their seat, but in the same moment drawing a deep sigh of relief from everyone. The hostile figure melted into the face of Big Brother, black-haired, black mustachioed, full of power and mysterious calm, and so vast that it almost filled up the screen. Nobody heard what Big Brother was saying. It was merely a few words of encouragement, the sort of words that are uttered in the din of battle, not distinguishable individually, but restoring confidence by the fact of being spoken. Then the face of Big Brother faded away again, and instead, the three slogans of the party stood out in bold capitals: war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. But the face of Big Brother seemed to persist for several seconds on screen, as though the impact that it made on everyone's eyeballs were too vivid to wear off immediately. The sandy-haired woman had flung herself forward over the back of the chair in front of her, with a tremulous murmur that sounded like "My Savior." She extended her arms towards the screen. Then she buried her face in her hands. It was apparent that she was uttering a prayer. At this moment, the entire group of people broke into a deep, slow, rhythmical chant of BB, 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 over and over again, very slowly, with a long pause between the first B and the second. A heavy murmurous sound, which somehow curiously savage, in the background of which one seemed to hear the stamp of naked feet and the throbbing of tom-toms. For perhaps as much as 30 seconds, they kept it up. It was a refrain that was often heard in moments of overwhelming emotion. Partly it was a sort of hymn to the wisdom of majesty of Big Brother, but still more it was an act of self-hypnosis, a deliberate drowning of consciousness by means of rhythmic noise. Winston and Trails seemed to grow cold in the 2 minutes of hate. He could not help sharing in the general delirium, but this subhuman chanting of BB, BB always filled him with horror. Well, and that's just like people just doing shit as a pack.
Mm-hmm.
And just group thinking.
Mm-hmm. Like the protests for nothing.
Well, yeah,
where they're like
don't have a reason.
Hey, we're oppressed and we have nothing as our raiding and looting their own businesses.
Like, I can't imagine why you guys don't fucking have anything.
Mm-hmm.
It blows my mind. Absolutely mind-blowing.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, that's what I'm saying, and they don't even think about it.
No. To disassemble your feelings, to control your face, to do what everyone else was doing, was an instinctive reaction. But there was a space of a couple of seconds during which the expression in his eyes might conceivably have betrayed him. And it was exactly at this moment that the significant thing happened. If indeed it did happen. He caught O'Brien's eye. O'Brien had stood up, he had taken off his spectacles, and he was in the act of resettling them on his nose with his characteristic gesture. But there was a fraction of a second when their eyes met, and for as long as it took, Winston knew, yes, he knew, that O'Brien was thinking the same thing as himself. An unmistakable message had passed. It was as though their two minds had opened and their thoughts were flowing from one into the other through their eyes. I am with you, O'Brien seemed to be saying to him. I know precisely what you are feeling. I know all about your contempt, your hatred, your disgust, but don't worry, I'm on your side. And then with the flash of intelligence, and then the flash of intelligence was gone, and O'Brien's face was as inscrutable, huh, as everybody else's. That was all, and he was already uncertain whether it had happened. Such instances, I can't read right now. Such incidences never had any sequel. All that they did was to keep him alive, or to keep alive in him the belief or hope that others beside him, besides himself, were the enemies of the party. Perhaps the rumors of the vast underground conspiracies were true after all. Perhaps the Brotherhood really existed. It was possible, in spite of the endless arrests and confessions and executions, to be sure that the Brotherhood was not simply a myth. Some days he believed in it, some days not. There was no evidence, only fleeting glimpses that might mean anything or nothing. Snatches of overheard conversations, faint scribbles on laboratory walls, once even when two strangers met, a small movement of hands which had looked as though it might be a signal of recognition. It was all guesswork. Very likely he had imagined everything. He had gone back to his cubicle without looking at O'Brien again. The idea following up their momentary contact hardly crossed his mind. It would have been inconceivably dangerous, even if he had known how to set about doing it. For a second, 2 seconds, he had exchanged an equivocal glance, and that was the end of the story. But even the memorable event and the locked loneliness in which one had to live, Winston roused himself and sat up straighter. He let out a belch. The gin was rising from his stomach. His eyes refocused to the page. He discovered that while he had sat helplessly, musing, he had also been writing, as though by automatic action. And it was no longer the same cramped, awkward handwriting as before. His pen had slid voluptuously over the smooth paper, printing in large, neat capitals. Down with Big Brother. 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 Over and over again, filling half a page. Huh. He's like mindlessly like down with Big Brother, which
Well, sitting there thinking about all of it.
Yeah, well, and it's not like, I mean, you live in something like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're enjoying this, please leave a like. Definitely follow or subscribe. Sorry, not like. Subscribe. And then you'll be able to follow on because I'm not reading this whole book tonight. I got like another page and then I'll be done with this chapter. So, anyways. He could not help feeling a twinge of panic. It was absurd, since the writing of those particular words was not more dangerous than the initial act of opening the diary, but for a moment he was tempted to tear out the spoiled pages and abandon the enterprise altogether. And that is why you end up with people that fucking erase shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like off the internet, they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say that, and they get scared.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm reading 1984 here. If you enjoy it, if you enjoy what I read, leave a like, leave a comment, and follow. Carrying on. But he did not do so. However, because he knew that it was useless, whether he wrote down with Big Brother or whether he refrained from writing it, it made no difference. Whether he went with the diary or whether he did not go on with it made no difference. The thought police would get him just the same. He had committed, would still have committed, even if he had never set pen to paper, the essential crime that contained all others in itself. Thought crime, they called it. Thought crime was not a thing that could be concealed forever. You might dodge successfully for a while, even for years, but sooner or later they were bound to get you. It was always at night. The arrest invariably happened at night. The sudden jerk out of sleep, the rough handshake shaking your shoulders, the lights glaring in your eyes, the ring of hard faces round the bed. The vast majority of cases, there was no trial, no report of arrest. People simply disappeared. Always during the night. Your name was removed from the register. Every record of everything you had ever done was wiped out. Your one-time existence was denied and then forgotten. You're abolished, annihilated, vaporized was the usual word. For a moment, he was seized by a kind of hysteria. He began writing in a hurried, untidy scrawl. They'll shoot me, I don't care. They'll shoot me in the back of the neck, I don't care. Down with Big Brother, they always shoot you in the back of the neck, I don't care. Down with Big Brother. Well, and that's something else, is the only reason he's even able to say this is because he's hidden. They can't see what's on the page. He's not saying it out loud. This is things that he can't say out loud at all.
He can't even think about it too close to those people.
Oh yeah, 100%.
They're trying to look at your face and see if you're thinking about things.
Yeah. Yeah. And so he's got to be writing it down because it's his ultimate form of secrecy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you're enjoying this, please leave a like. Please leave a comment. And if you want to continue this book, you're going to have to subscribe. Otherwise, you're not going to know what happens unless you go and read it yourself, which you can do. Anyways, he sat back in his chair, slightly ashamed of himself, and laid down his pen. The moment the moment he started violently, there was a knocking at his door. Already, he sat still as a mouse, in the futile hope that whoever it was might go away after a single attempt. But no. The knocking was repeated. The worst thing of all would be to delay. His heart was thumping like a drum, but his face, from long habit, was probably expressionless. He got up and moved heavily toward the door. And with that, we end chapter 1. If you want to finish chapter 2, you're going to have to come back. You're going to have to like. You're going to have to subscribe. Other than that, that's it for the night. Thanks for stopping in, and I hope you enjoyed my reading. I'm going to be posting this, so you always got that for reference if you ever want to hear it again.